Welcome to the Moffitt Method Podcast, where longtime strength and conditioning coach Tommy Moffitt explores everything from the art of coaching, improving performance, sports nutrition, and mental training. Now, welcome your host, Coach Tommy Moffitt.
Welcome to the Moffitt Method Podcast, and I am your host, Tommy Moffitt. If you are listening for the first time, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. Our distinguished guest today is Coach Jason Elkin. Coach Elkin is the owner and head coach at Elkin Sports Performance in Richmond, Virginia. Born and raised in Richmond, Jason grew up as a wrestler at Douglas Freeman High School. After high school and while attending VCU, Jason worked as an assistant strength and conditioning coach at the University of Richmond, where he worked with all of the members of the Richmond sports teams. After graduation from VCU, Jason continued his education at the University of Tennessee, where he earned his master's degree in exercise science. During this time, Jason was on the strength and conditioning staff and worked with the Tennessee football team as well as members of all the men's athletic teams. After graduation from Tennessee, Jason was hired as the strength coach at the prestigious McCallie School in Chattanooga, Tennessee. During his 7 years at McCallie, Jason helped many athletes achieve their goal of becoming a Division I athlete. Jason was hired in 2005 by D1 Sports and D1 Sports Training and Therapy as the Director of Strength and Conditioning. He held that position until 2008 when he moved back to Richmond to open Elkin's Sports Performance. Since opening ESP, Jason has had the privilege to work with athletes and adults ranging as young as 7 years old to professional athletes. ESP is still active in the Richmond area and continues to thrive. Welcome to the podcast, Coach Elkin. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great, Tommy. Thank you so much for having me on. It's an absolute honor to sit down with you and talk about strength conditioning and kind of what I've done and in the path I've taken for this.
Yeah, well, thanks. It's great to have you on, and before the show, we were laughing and cutting up about old times, and it's always, great to see you and to sit back and talk about the good old days and how everything, how we all got into this great business here.
Coming from Richmond and being a part of that Tennessee staff when I met you and just everybody that was with it, it's just and to see kind of how everybody's different paths have gone. It's really neat to circle back and seeing you over the last couple of years when my daughter's doing gymnastics and she would go to the LSU gymnastics camp and be able to come in and hang out in your weight room when you're there for those couple of days was always just a great experience.
Yeah, it's been fun, man. We've had a great time, and we both got gray hair now. It's funny that picture. So, funny story before we start. So Clay has got a receding hairline. Clay's my oldest son, 28, got a receding hairline. And I've always told him, I said, Clay, I had the exact same hairline when I was your age. So when you sent the picture the other day of us walking down the hill, it was before, I don't know if it was before the Alabama game or whatever. I showed that picture to Clay and I said, see, we got the same hairline, and I still got all my hair because he's already dead. He's going to go bald, but back then we all had dark hair. We had
all dark hair, looking young. Coming down.
Young and dumb, man. Do you remember what game was that? The Alabama game?
I'm going to say it was Alabama. I'm going to say it was.
Packed.
It was packed. What a great experience. Being part of that and coming from Richmond and not knowing what a vol walk was or what it meant the very first time I was on the vol walk, like, what are we doing? When we turned that corner into the stadium and that sea of orange was right there, you're like, oh my gosh, you really felt like you were part of something way bigger than yourself, and just everything about it kind of put in perspective of you need to win to keep all these people happy.
Yeah, you better win. You better win, or they're going to be waiting for you. Trust me. All right, so I've got some questions here that and they're general. This first question is generally the same for everybody. And whether you're an aspiring strength coach or a high school administrator, I think it's important that you understand how how and why people get into strength and conditioning. So my first question is, how did you get started in the strength and conditioning field? And was there anything from your background that prepared you to do it?
I was going to be a high school wrestling coach and PE teacher till my last year of school. And I loved work. I loved coaching wrestling. I loved that grind. I liked that side of it. I didn't like working with the everyday kid who didn't have those types of passions and wants and desires, and where they had that driven appeal. When I was going through as a wrestler myself, I was cutting weight back in the day, and always was interested on how I could do it better. What were the different strength approaches, how it was. And my dad would go out and find me these gyms. And one of them was called Body Mechanics, in the back of the shopping center in the basement, and working out with all these big bodybuilders. That's kind of where I had my first real taste of strength, like working like just big whole bodybuilder guys, and strength training here. And then that guy left. I went and found me another place, and then it was all these different methods, and until he found me this guy, Carlos de Jesus, who actually built his own gym in his backyard in a shed out of like 2x4s and pulleys, and you'd go in there and he'd give you a little water bottle, and you'd ride for 5 minutes. He'd take you through essentially now a high intensity 30-minute program where one thing to the next. And I got so demented that if I didn't get sick after workout, I didn't think I was working hard enough. And it really showed like, okay, here's a strength, here's this. I didn't know even what I was looking for at that age. And then my last semester, I went to VCU for college, jumping ahead a little bit. Went to VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University here in Richmond. I was coaching wrestling and doing a couple other things and working as a personal trainer. And I had to do a 450-hour internship. And I ended up going at University of Richmond, there was a strength coach there named Trey Teichelman who allowed me to come on and do my internship there. And being a guy, I walked in and literally got hit by the lightning bolt. I was like, this is what I want to do. I mean, I cannot believe I can be my size and I can do this. I can train football guys, and absolutely fell in love. And I was looking to go to a master's program, and I went and I got accepted to the University of Tennessee. And I was at a clinic in Atlanta, Speed Dynamics, that was given by Lauren Seagrave.
Yeah.
And there was a guy there named Tommy Moffitt and John Stuckey. And I went up and started and so I walked up to him and introduced myself to Tommy Moffitt. And I said, hey, my name is, and I walked in. I said, this is where I want to be. I've been accepted to Tennessee. I've deferred my admissions for 1 year because I'm working with the strength coach. I'm in charge of 3 or 4 different teams at University of Richmond. And I want to enroll in February. If I come down, can I get part of the strength staff? And you're like, come on, you're going to work for free, but prove yourself and we'll see what's going on. And I was like, well, look, all I wanted was a foot in the door, because back up a little bit before that conference, there was I'm like everybody back in the day, you're searching through the NCAA.org for jobs. And I was looking for one, and University of Tennessee GA position came up. So I called the head strength coach, John Stuckey, and set a meeting up. Absolutely, come on down. So I came down. I got my dad. I was beyond excited. Drove down with a 9 a.m. meeting with John Stuckey on a Tuesday. So I drove down, get there at 9 o'clock. I sit there in front of his office. It's about 9:30, 9:45, almost 10 o'clock. He comes in. Coach Stuckey's like, yes. I walked into his office. I introduced myself, sat down, said, I'm Jason Elkin. I'm here to interview for the GA position that you posted. He goes, oh, that position's been filled. It's like, thank you. Pleasure meeting you. Got back in the car, drove 7 hours home, said, my dad goes, you want to get a sweatshirt? I go, heck no. I am out of here. And so I went back and started. Right?
Classic stuck diesel.
I mean, absolutely. So we went
wonder
back
who
to
he hired.
Johnny Long.
Oh, it was Johnny.
Johnny Long.
You got beat out by Johnny.
Unbelievable, right? And so I went. And we brought a guy in from Baton Rouge. Okay.
So, that was going to be one of my questions is I had forgotten how it happened, how you came to Knoxville. It was Saturday in Atlanta.
Yep. Saturday in Atlanta, sat there talking to you and you were like, yeah, come on. Here's where you would start. It would be the summertime. So I got everything hooked up. Y'all had the strength clinic that April, I guess it was. I came, you said, come on down for that and meet everybody. So I drove down, met everybody for that. That's when myself, Johnny Long, Tommy Stuckey, and Rob Phillips all moved in together in College Park.
All right. So wait, so say that again.
I ended up moving in.
Your class.
My class, I moved in with Johnny Long, Tommy Stuckey, and Rob Phillips. Big baby. So we lived in College Park together, the four of us.
Wow.
And then when Johnny and Tommy left out, then Rob and I had a house together. But like that was when Lance Sewell was there. I was back into Nate Hooks, and then Aaron Osmus was still a thrower with you.
Yeah. Noel was Noel.
Noel was there. Noel was probably, to this day, Noel Durfee, probably the hardest working man in show business right there. That guy. I mean, he was a guy I know that where we go to talk about some things that inspired. I mean, you'd walk into a weight room and Noel was just that guy. He was just cleaning. He was just making sure everything was tight all the time. It's no wonder he's been such a success along the way.
Now, he was there before you or after, or came in after?
He was there he was there the same time I was.
Yeah, because he graduated from Liberty, I think is where he graduated from.
Yeah.
But just like you, he came to do an internship and then became a grad assistant. And then his first job, I remember he went to BYU to work with Chuck Stiggins. And then after that, he went to Auburn I think it was Auburn or Mississippi State. I don't remember which. I think he went to Auburn. I think he went
down to Ole Miss, the Cutcliffe, didn't he?
Well, no, that was later on. That was later on.
That was later on. Okay.
Yeah, he was an assistant at a couple of places, but
it was great. I mean, Eric Ciano was there when I was there.
Yeah, so Ciano, he was a GA when you started, correct?
Yep.
Yeah,
no,
so
I think he was a little bit after me because I came in there. It was myself, Tom. I mean, Eric. I think Eric was like maybe year 2 that I was there because he was there. Chris Stewart and Ciano, we all overlapped.
Yeah. So Eric. Yeah. So Eric came in as an intern, became a GA, and then maybe I left, and then Eric left, but then Eric came back. Once I guess Eric came back to work for Johnny, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Those were the good old days, man.
I mean, what a great opportunity. I mean, just everything about what was just such a. And so it was. No, I mean, just getting started in this field, and I mean, I grew up where my dad was a bail bondsman and shoe repairman, and my mom had her own businesses, and just seeing what they did when my dad finally closed his store 3 years ago, he was 104 years old when it ended. And he just worked. He just worked all.
Your dad was 100?
No. His store that he owned. So it was my grandfather's store, then my father's store. And,
the shoe store.
The shoe store was 104 years old, and so between him and just showing what work was, I had a wrestling coach, Drew Bright, who was he was that guy for me. Besides my parents, my grandfather, he was that guy for me that just taught you about accountability, that you need to be there if others are depending on you, that if that's your weight class and you better own it, you better own what you have to do and essentially just do your job to the best of your ability, whatever that means. Just make sure that you're there for everybody else.
All right, shoe store question real quick. All right. Did you work in the shoe store?
I did growing up. So I did, I obviously behind the counter, talking to customers. He had a shoe shine stand up there, like a 3-seater shoe shine stand. And you could get from the mayor to a doctor to the dude off the street, all getting shoe shine. So the conversations were always great. And
so kind of like a barbershop.
I mean, yeah, you could talk to anybody. And then I could do, I could pull a woman's heel and fix a little bit. Besides that, they didn't let me do a whole lot more.
All right, but let me ask you this. Here was my question. What's the best pair of shoes? What?
I mean, back in the day, it was, the reason why there's so few shoe repair stores now is that no one's buying the leather bottom shoes anymore. Now you can wear a pair of Air Force Ones with your high end suit now.
Yeah.
So so a lot of the shoe stores aren't there anymore. So you can get a lot of women's stuff, but you can now almost drop ship your stuff out somewhere, and they do it and they send it back.
But if you have a good pair of cowboy boots, you got to get. If you got a good pair of cowboy boots, you got to get them resold. Now I'm old school. I still get, if I have a pair of leather bottom shoes where it goes bad, I take them in.
You can get your half soles and heels on those things.
Yeah. So Clay, Clay had a nice pair of cowboy boots, and he's like, Dad, I need a new pair of cowboy boots. And I said, why? And he goes, well, I got holes in the bottom of them. I said, well, what are you going to do? He goes, well, I don't want them anymore. I was like, Clay, those are still good boots. You can put new bottoms on them. He's like, nah, I don't want them. They were a good broken in pair of boots. So I took them to the shoe store, had new bottoms put on it. And then he steals the boots from me. He gets a new pair of boots and then steals mine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I took plenty of shoes from my old man.
Yeah. All right. Any defining moments early on in your career that were, that was very influential in your development?
Yes, absolutely. So as a young strength at University of Richmond, it was just great to be a part of that. The guy who really gave me a start there was Jim Reed, who's a coach with Boston College now, but he was a head football coach at Richmond and gave me a really nice opportunity there to be part of it. And he was just be accountable, be there, know what you're talking about. When I got to UT, being a young strength coach and being part of that staff that we just talked about was unbelievable. From the 6 a.m. meetings to understanding what was going on, knowing what you had to do, and just the adage of coach every set, every rep. Coach every set, every rep. Coach the athlete. The athlete that comes in at the end of the day on a Friday is just as important as the athlete that comes in first thing Monday morning when everybody's fresh. Coach everybody. They're there to get work done. Work them. Let's go. And then I had this guy who once told me, underpromise, overdeliver, and leave it better than you found it. And so that guy, I really have believed that all the way through. That's stuff that I live by each and every day when I go to different teams or leagues. That those are things that have defined what I do each and every day. I think it's what separates different coaches. There's plenty of people who just open up the weight room. I think there's others who go in there and they coach it all the way through. As you know, some athletes they like that. Some athletes are a little more hands off. But if you're there and the athlete knows that you're there for them, then I think that you can get the most out of that athlete. So I think that those things that I learned from you were a huge influence on that, and then Coach Stuckey and the rest of the guys who we worked with, and just seeing everybody in that group of you're there to coach, you're there to work. And if you're there and you have that right thing that nobody owes you anything, that you just got to work through it, keep on grinding each and every day. And you put it out there, and especially being there for the athlete. That I thought that was a really big thing that I saw that respect that the athlete showed you, showed Stuckey, showed some of these other guys that when they were going through that, and you don't get respect just by default. You get it because you're there for them and that you can listen to them and hear what they have to say. And I think that's where that those early lessons helped me develop throughout.
And those 6 a.m. staff meetings that we had, they were for real. Oh, yeah. And for the people that are listening, those 6 a.m. staff meetings were not on like days where we had workouts. They were like every day of the week. It didn't matter. It didn't matter when we had them. He would say, hey, buddy, tell everybody we're going to have a 6 a.m. meeting tomorrow. And we would sit in there and go over personnel like we were fixing to draft an NFL football team.
Absolutely.
We talked about everybody's strengths, their weaknesses, any injuries that they had, and then we would go over that program. And that's one thing that Coach Stuckey taught me was, flawless execution of the program. We would go over that workout and over every aspect of it about who was going to be doing what we were looking for, what we didn't want to have. I mean, it was unbelievable, and that's something that stuck with me the entire time that I've coached, and still, even with the podcast and our business, it's that flawless execution of the program is critical, and that's been something that has been very influential for me from that time.
Well, it was. I mean, not only going through the programming. Because right there as a GA, we would be in those meetings. We didn't have much of a voice in those meetings. But as we went through that stuff, we would go through as we would go through the meetings. We would sorry.
No, that's all right. You don't smash your desk, okay?
No, I'm not. That junk telephone calls. But as we go through those meetings, the GAs, we didn't have as much input within the programs, but to sit there and to listen to how it was run and how it was developed and the reason, not just here, we're just going to do this because there was a reason for everything.
Yeah.
But from a key set at the end of a bench, and here's why Coach Stuckey loved that, to at the end of the meeting when they would look at you and say, "El, come on, teach us how to do a power clean." And so here it is, you're a young strength coach, you walk out that platform and you got to teach the entire staff how to do a power clean. You have somebody who would have one thing wrong, and you got to figure out what am I doing wrong. And I think that those are the things that really help that attention to detail. As I've gotten older, those are still things that you can't let certain things slide. I mean, there's only one way to do it, and you have to do it that certain way to make sure for the protection of the athlete, protection of the integrity of the program, of what you're doing. And there's that. Listen to you guys all the way through it. It's been neat to see how that has translated into what I'm doing now.
Yeah, that was my interview at Tennessee. We talked for a little bit, and then when he found out that I was from the country, we talked a little farming, because he grew up on a farm. And then he took me out on the workout floor, and they were doing snatches that day. And he said, "I want you to go over there, take that young man through a snatch progression." And it was a guy named Jason Parker who was playing safety at Tennessee. And Coach Stuckey had me take him through the snatch and break it all down and start from scratch. It was pretty awesome.
Well, I mean,
all right. So, yeah, go ahead.
I would say, well, hearing your story of coming through, and if everybody knew how many legal pads you wrote, how to do a power clean, a snatch, a clean and jerk through, and how many times you taught yourself how to do that stuff. There's not too many coaches ever that have probably gone through a tenth of the legal pads you went through to write that stuff down. That was, I remember you still had all those when I first met you.
Yeah, still got them. I still have the notes from the conference that we went to in Atlanta when Lauren Seagraves. I still have that. That's so when I moved out of my office at LSU, I knew I needed some boxes, but I didn't have any idea how much stuff I had collected over the years. And I filled up, now it was raining that day, but I filled up my truck, and then I had to call Jill, and she came over there, and I filled up her truck on the, I had to lay the back seat down and just fill it. It looked like I was moving to Seattle or something. I had so much stuff, but I have a copy of everything that I've ever written in my entire.
Isn't that great?
Yeah. I have stuff that I have notes from exercise phys and kinesiology and stuff when I was in college. I'm a pack rat.
Right.
Pack rat. So you've coached at the FCS level, the FBS level, you've coached middle schoolers, high schoolers, and you've run a very successful training facility. What are some of the similarities and then some of the differences between those different places?
I think the similarities are that athletes are athletes and they all want to get better, right? I mean, and it's you having the right program that's going to help them reach their goals. And I think that the athletes, when they know, no matter where you are, that you're there for them. But that's what the biggest similarity is that if you're there, you're showing that you're putting the right program together for them to succeed. That's not about you as a coach; it's about them as the athlete. And I think that's where I think a lot of that will help push them a certain way. They're all trained to compete. I think where the biggest similarity is that they all want to win, right? They all want to get out there. They all want to show up on game day ready to go. I think the biggest difference between all those things and the private industry is the consistency of the athlete showing up. Where when you are in the college or high school setting, you know that you're going to have X amount of athletes for X amount of days for this time period, and you can program accordingly. Having what I have seen over the years in my industry, in this industry on the private side, is that you have certain athletes who are extremely consistent. They're very, just like college or high school, they're very easy to program for. Because they're going to come in 3 days a week. They sign up for a 12-week program. They're coming in for that block, and here's their program, what they're going to do. Majority of the athletes that we have in this, depending on the week, depending on the time of year, you may see them 3 days this week, once next week, 2 the week after, 3 the week after that. So it's a little bit more sporadic of when they're coming in. So having a program that's going to be able to address their needs, to continue to talk about consistency, but you don't know if you have the athlete that is they could still be in high school and still be a multi-sport athlete, where they are playing even if they're playing basketball, they're playing basketball for this AAU team here, and they're doing rec and they're doing practices. So trying to get those workouts lined up is a little bit more difficult. That's probably the biggest difference I see between the different levels. Because at the college and high school level, then that you have your 6 a.m. group and you're getting the same 20 kids in Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday coming in. And here's your 4-day split, or if you're doing a 3-day split, it's much easier to program from all the periodizations of how you want to break that down, your jumps and your counts and your reps. So I think that's where I see that has been the biggest obstacle to overcome.
Yeah. Well, you've been doing it for 14 years, all right? And you're still standing in a business in a sector where a lot of people open and close their doors, by the week or by the month, and for a lot of different reasons. From being in the business for yourself, how did the pandemic affect your business and how you were able to stay relevant and not lose your clientele? Like, how were you able to keep the doors open and then continue to thrive after when so many others have failed?
That's a great question. I mean, that was an extremely hard, emotional time as a small business owner where you have 2 kids. Bills are still coming, mortgages still coming due, rent's still coming due. It was March 18th on that Tuesday when the governor of Virginia shut down all the fitness centers with no idea when it's going to open back up or what you could and can do. Went home that day and kind of dove into some things and kind of felt very, very sorry for myself for probably about a week. And I was sitting in the shower probably one day, honestly crying my eyes out, like, what am I going to do? And I have a little mirror in my shower, and I looked at it. It's like, ain't nobody coming to save you. If you're going to do it, you got to figure this thing out. And I wasn't sure how I was going to do it. And so I was like, maybe I can't have clients at my facility, but I can go down there. I need to get out of the house. I came down to my place and just kind of paced, walked around everything. I said, first, I'm going to repaint everything. I'm a steam clean all my turf. I'm deep cleaning everything. And as I was going through, I was like, let me reach out to my big clients on what I can do. And I had never done any Zoom workouts or anything like that. I have a friend of mine in town, and she's in the fitness field as well, and I knew that she had already done it, so I called her, like, how are you doing this? And so she told me kind of how she was doing it, and I essentially went through all my clients, and we put up workouts. So if you're an 11 to 14-year-old group, then you could sign up for the 4 to 5 o'clock, and it was part of your program. And I would get online just like how we're doing now, and I would zoom in, and I'd send out the link, and I would do a workout, essentially a body weight workout to follow along with. And then I did it with about 15 to 18-year-olds, and then I work with a swim club here in town called Nova, one of the biggest swim clubs in the country, and they were the same way. They were shut down. They wanted to keep their community together. And so we had a Monday, Wednesday group, 6 to 7, and a Tuesday, Thursday group, 6 to 7. And we'd have 60, 70 kids logged into the computer as I'm sitting there showing exercises, doing jumping jacks, doing twists, doing a dynamic warm-up in place, and everybody was right there, and it kept everybody together as they were going through. And it was a very humbling time, very hard time, but it was something where you adapt and overcome and figure out what you're going to do. And I think that made me it helped me understand a whole lot of things a whole lot better about what you need to do for the athlete, and that continue to validate that you need to be there for the athlete. And people want to work out. We did for our adult clientele as well, where they would log in, and it kept everybody together, because everybody was so disassociated from everybody that it kept everybody together in the community, where we could continue to work together for the same goals. And so that was once it came back out, we're able to open our gym back up. Then the people that stayed with me, I helped them out with their programming, and thank you for staying with me, gave a little bit of extra time within their programs, and worked back into it. And then once the schools opened, it took the schools, and I do a lot of stuff with teams and leagues here in town. It took them a little bit longer to get going again, but we did outside stuff.
Tell me some of the outside stuff. I thought was pretty neat. You care sharing what y'all did?
Absolutely. So one of my buddies, he's a full-time fireman, but he's been a bodybuilder in the fitness field forever. Named Trevor, and Trevor and I purchased a mobile trailer that actually opens up to be a full gym, where you can, like a trailer hits at the front, you can put 2 squat racks in the front, both sides open up, and that becomes a squat rack. It lowers down to the ground, so it sits flush on the ground. And we would do outdoor workouts, and we would set that up, and people would come in, and it was just a group fitness class, and it gave people an opportunity to get back together with their community and to work out, to stay in shape, and keep striving for their goals, what they were looking for, and to keep that ball rolling.
Yeah. Now, y'all built that, or you bought it?
No, we bought it.
Yeah. It was already prefabbed.
It was already prefabbed, and so we did that, and that's been a great experience, because even to this day we still go to different, like a restaurant on a Friday night and do like a happy hour. We're at different places each, which is great to do, and work out for an hour and then eat and drink for the rest of the night.
No kidding. So you're still using it?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Huh?
Absolutely. And we'll go to schools and set it up and have like teacher workouts, or go to corporations and set it up and have like a lunchtime workout or an after work workout. And so they literally they can come down the stairs, have their workout stuff on, get a workout for 45 minutes, an hour, and then head on home.
Go back to work. Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
All right. So have you noticed, again, you've been doing it for more than 14 years. You've been in business for yourself for 14 years. But have you noticed any changes in the age groups that you're working with, and how it's changed over the years?
Well, it has. I think that one, social media has played a tremendous role in, for good or bad, within those changes. It's everybody's gonna put in the best stuff that they want out of social media. Everything's no one's putting in their defeats.
nobody.
It's always the wins. And so kids seeing how many guys and girls are going on to play college athletics, that is a big push, that if you haven't gotten there, are you doing what you need to do? I think that the programming for training has started younger and younger. I think that the biggest thing that, and I think, look, there's a million ways to skin the cat when it comes to this stuff. Just because I do it a certain way doesn't mean it's right or wrong. Just that this has worked for me. I believe in safety with the kids. I believe in having a sound progression and really doing plain vanilla great with the young athlete. And I think that you have some people like more the functional approach, some people like more the Olympic approach. That it's just how we can't combine everything to do it. I think that as a kid, the programming is starting younger and younger. That there's more travel that's involved in travel sports. There's more pull. The days of playing outside and just running around playing tag with your peers growing up and just messing around in the woods are a whole lot smaller opportunities for the kids, because they are either always in practice, everything, their life is a whole lot more scheduled over the last 15, 20 years than it had been. That everything is systematic, that you might go from basketball practice to lacrosse practice to swim practice, and then you have events that go on. So having the kids on a consistent basis of working out, I think has lowered. And so the expectations are higher for the kids' success on that side of it. So I think that's where everybody, it's even starting younger, where the coaches that come in and work with youth sports I love youth sports, but it is the winning a lot of times outweighs the development of the young athlete.
Yeah.
And I think that the development of the young athlete gets overshadowed by the dad or the coach who is all he wants is that 9-year-old rec championship trophy. That's something he might not have ever gotten, rather than teaching kids how to do things the proper way. And like I said, I'm a massive advocate on doing plain vanilla great. I think that, look, I like a heavy squat, heavy clean, heavy jerk as much as the next guy in this industry. But I do believe that if the kid doesn't have the proper foundation for it, and they're going to have breakdowns as they go on. I want to make sure that as kids come through the program and taking the proper steps, and they continue to progress in a linear fashion, I want them to, when they walk into a college, if they have either first and foremost have a great high school experience. That I think that is the most crucial thing ever, that they have a great high school experience. 94% of high school athletes are not playing college sports. 94%. There's only 6% that are out there, but that's the ones that really get all the push and the accolades. I mean, there's absolutely positively nothing wrong with having a great high school experience. Because that's the majority of our friends. I mean, our kids are fortunate enough that they're playing in college, but there's a lot of work to get there. And the majority of their teammates are not doing that. And then if they do have the opportunity to go on to college, then my whole goal within the programming is to make sure when I hand them off to whatever school that they're going to, then they have such a good foundation that whatever that coach wants to do to push forward, they have such a good foundation, then they're ready to go. Because if you are 14 years old, 13 years old, and you're hitting heavy, heavy squats, and you have that chance to become a college football player, I mean, how long can your body maintain? What can it do? And so I just want to make sure that when they get to college, that they are still, that there's still a lot of room for growth once they get to that college.
Yeah. And that's the way it is for a college athlete too. You want to make sure that those guys still have some treads left on the tire when they leave your university to go to the next level. It's the same thing. Well, let me ask you this. You've talked a lot about young kids and stuff. At what age do you think it's okay to introduce, the barbell exercises?
I think that depending on that's a great question. When we first started, we had a 7 to 10-year-old program on what we did, and that would end up being a small part of it. I love the 11 to 14-year-old kid in the introduction at that age. You might have, but with that said, you might have a 9-year-old who is very athletic. He or she is extremely coordinated, and you can introduce that light barbell. We have the PVC pipes. When I say barbell, it may be, I may use a PVC pipe. I may use a dumbbell. I may use a 15-pound bar. It's not just jumping right into the 45-pound bar. I think it's depending on the athlete, but I think that it is any athlete that comes in with us, that we're going to start from the very, very basics. And when that athlete comes in, because you might have that 16-year-old kid who comes in and they've never lifted a weight before. And so I feel you have to go through the proper progressions on where they are to teach that 16-year-old no different than how you teach a 10 or 11-year-old. I mean, they have to have that foundation. If not, you're going to have breakdowns as you go forward. And so with that young kid, if they come in here and they're showing the aptitude that they can come in and they understand what you're teaching and what you're coaching, and their backs are flat and everything, and they look good, then I think that you can go with them. You just have to use a sub-maximal weight there's no reason you can't teach a young kid how to do these proper exercises. If you look at it, and people talk about depth jumps and whatever else, and years ago I was in Knoxville getting ready to talk about warm-ups and plyometrics to a youth organization. And one of the questions that they had posed before was, when can you start putting in plyometric training? So I'm sitting there and I'm talking about I'm looking at all the science about it, make sure I'm telling it, and I'm seeing my 5-year-old son jump from the sofa onto the ground, onto the table. Then he goes from the table, jumps, hits the ground, and goes right to the other chair. I'm looking at him going, what are you doing? And I didn't really correct him. I sat there and watched. Like, man, that's not a depth jump. That's what it is. And so I think that if they're done correctly and they're done where you're teaching just the movements of it, then they can be programmed. But with the young kid coming in, that if they show it and their willingness to be coached and taught, and then I think that you can introduce those exercises in a very safe and sound manner.
All right. What type of progression? Because you've said clean and snatch, a bunch of times in our conversation, it's obvious that, I know your background and that you believe in those. When a kid walks in, do you go straight to power clean, or do you break it down, and is there a progression to teaching it?
We 100% break it down. We'll take even if a kid we had one start yesterday, 17 years old.
Wait, say it again. You had fun start?
No, we had one start yesterday. We had a young man who's a spring athlete, lacrosse player, who came in, and I had never met this young man before. His dad says, hey, he's so good. He's so good. Well, he's expecting one thing, but I'm going to start you at the very beginning. I mean, it may be where we're going to go through. Let me see how if you're 16 years old, let me see how you do a PVC pipe. Let me see how you do a bar. Let me see how you do a goblet squat. Let me see your range of motion of what you're doing. And then once you go through that, same way I would a young middle school athlete is to take them through and to see how they're moving. But certain age groups and certain athletes will jump those progressions a little bit quicker. So you can see, he's well versed in the squat. He can do a front squat. He has good rack position. He has good hip mobility. Okay, have you ever done a pull before? So we'll go through and I'll put him on a trap bar first. I think that's a very easy way to show a movement, and it's a very safe and sound. Movement where they stand up with the trap bar. Then they'll do a pull with the trap bar. And then once they do that, then I'll go into a clean pull and show them bottom position and making sure that the bottom position is set and sound. Once that's done, then we go back and during that time, we've made sure that they understand what a front squat is. They understand what a jerk is. And then we'll go through and we'll progress them and this progression could take 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks.
Yes.
And so we want to make sure from that aspect, then we'll go into our hang cleans, clean below knee, 3-position clean, power clean, and make sure that the progressions are where they need to be, and make sure that their backs are where are set and sound and their body position is there. So before we can go on to the next phase is they have to be able to master the one before. And it's always technique before weight. And because there's folks that are out there that, I mean, unfortunately it happens at the high school setting a lot where more is better. And you see athletes break down. And the last thing that you want is an athlete who was in high school having a low back injury because they didn't do it properly. They did too much too soon. I mean, because as you know, that if an athlete goes out and they get hurt in the course of sport, then it's looked at one way. But if they get hurt in the exact same way in the weight room, it's looked at totally differently. It's not even remotely the same. So I would rather be a little more cautious and let that progression take a couple weeks longer or a month longer, 2 months longer, and progress them the right way to make sure they're really sound. So when they do start going heavier, then they understand how to accomplish that.
Yeah. All right. So we've talked a lot about the lifting and stuff. How do you organize like your running? Do you spend more time on acceleration, deceleration, or top speed? How do you organize the running?
We'll go through, so the typical week that if we're programming we'll do a dynamic warm up. We'll do our Mondays and Thursdays, we'll do straight ahead speed. Tuesdays are agility. We don't have Friday afternoons. And then Wednesdays and Saturdays kind of a 50-50, more on the agility side than the straight speed side. Speed, we want to go Mondays and Thursdays, and we'll coordinate that with the programming there. But we'll work on, for a lot of the kids, I would say the majority of my clientele is that 12 to 16-year-old athlete who's coming in. So it is a lot of form running, work on that acceleration, we'll work on the deceleration side of it, but a lot of the technical side of just where your arms would be, where your foot placement needs to be, how to get out the box, that first step as you're coming out. And then the majority of the athletes who we're seeing right now are your more of an agility side to side. We have a lot of lacrosse, a lot of football, a lot of soccer who will come in, baseball where it's more that lateral side. So the agility side, we get pretty heavy into the agility side as well.
All right. So are your programs, are they individualized, or do you have more of a basic program that you apply for the different sports, or do you have sport groups? Do you have a lacrosse group, a football group?
Great question. So how we'll come in is that everybody will come in and we have a 4:30 in the afternoon high school group that goes about an hour and 15 minutes, and then a 5:45 to 7 p.m. group. That's the middle school group. For that day, the running is going to be the running, because at those age groups, I'm more of an advocate, especially the middle school athlete, of age-specific training than sports training.
Sports specific, yeah.
Yeah, because I just think that, I mean, every kid needs to know how to run properly, all the different sports, the agility side they need to go, and then we'll add in conditioning as well. I don't think as many people spend as much time on the conditioning side as they do on the speed specific side of it. And I just think that a conditioned athlete is, I'll take that every day of the week. I do believe that you need to know how to run properly, obviously, and understand how to start, stop, accelerate. But I think that conditioned athlete really plays a huge part of it. So our running is a more generic for what the day of the week is. Once they get into the workout program, we have, over the course of 30 years, there's categories that people will fall into, depending on where they are. And that is just, so we'll have, like for our workout, it's from phase 1 to phase 10. And so if someone has been with us for 8 years, here's the tracking that we want you to go in. Once that athlete is, and then you can see this is going to be a baseball pitcher, and he is 15 years old. He's been with us for 3 years. His foundation is great. The kid's a hard worker. but he's a pitcher. Then we'll take his workout and tweak his workout to make sure that's specific to that individual athlete's needs. And so that's where we have found the most success with the stuff, because I think that every athlete needs to know how to squat, and pull, and press efficiently and effectively. Then they need to know how to run properly, how to jump and land. And then once they get to that point, then we can start working with the specifics. Is your sport more rotational? A lot of them will work everything. I mean, I deal with a lot of lacrosse kids right now, and you're looking at a difference. That's a hockey, a football, a soccer, a rotation, a throwing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. I mean, that encompasses everything. And start, stop, speed, acceleration, deceleration, lateral. So that's been a lot of fun to work with as well. So exactly that, we'll have the foundation, and then we'll individualize it from there.
Do you get many wrestlers?
Not as many as I would like. I did that. The guys that we have gotten, fortunately, have had a lot of success. When they come in, that's always my favorite program to have. I have some really good programs for that. And the few kids that have come in and done it, fortunately, they've won a couple state championships off of it. And even back when I was at Macaulay, that was so much fun.
Yeah.
I think we had 13 kids win 26 state championships back in the day. And the kids here that have done it have won a couple as well. And they just work hard.
Yeah.
It's really neat to see those kids.
Yeah. None of the Moffitt boys ever picked it up. You know, all of my brothers, we all wrestled, but Clay and Aaron and Brady, there was a time when some guys were trying to talk Clay into coming out, but he played baseball, you know, and you go from football to wrestling to baseball. That's tough
a lot
right there.
Yeah. I mean,
so none of my boys picked it up.
I think that wrestling just teaches you so much about yourself and work and just that. You have to be dependent on, you have to be dependable, reliable. You have to be that guy.
And it's just you.
And just you.
Can't blame it on anybody.
No, you know, it's funny. One of the questions you had asked her is that was there any like big lessons you learned early? And, you know, one of the ones I go back on that I tell young strength coaches that you never know what position or where you're going to end up. And I was a GA at Tennessee, and we had the strength conditioning clinic going on at the time as we were winning games. So I want to say that was one of the clinics that we had like 400 and something.
Oh, it was giant. It was
athlete. Our coach upstairs, like 1,100 kids downstairs.
Yeah.
And we're out there teaching. And at the time, I was with all the GAs, and about a week after the clinic, there's a water cooler on top of the counter. It has a number 7 on it. And then a couple days later, it has like a 12 on it. And then at a certain time, it gets to about, I see it has like 21 or 22 on it. I walk up to Eric Ciano, go, Eric, why does that cooler have a number? He goes, oh, man, you are in so much trouble. You need to go see Johnny right now. So here it is at the time, Johnny Long, who's my best friend and happens to be my boss as well. And I walk into his office. He closes the door. I go, man, Ciano told me I need to see you about the number on the cooler. He goes, let me tell you what, man. He goes, that cooler's been sitting up there for 20-something days, 22 days. He goes, you're in charge of the GAs. You're in charge of all this. And you allow that to sit there without ever taking ownership of that you need to fix it. And he goes, and I told everybody, if I found out that anybody else went to move it or clean it, I'm going to fire them. He goes, you never know if you're going to be in charge of your own weight room. You don't know if you're going to be in charge of your own program. You don't know if you're the one that has to clean the facility day in and day out. You don't know. He goes, but if you don't take care of it, nobody else will. You make sure you clean up after it. And I'll tell you what, to this day, I'm 51 years old, and I've been doing this for 30-something years, and that was probably one of the biggest changes, and I can't believe I have to give that guy credit for that one. But,
well, you know who told Johnny not to touch it, huh?
Who, you?
Me, yeah. Because it sat there forever. And I was like, why is that cooler? It's been there for 2 days. Nobody's picked it up.
Yeah.
And then Johnny goes, I'm going to put a number on it. It
and
was like a 3x5 note card.
Yep. And you know what? And I actually, when I had some of my staff that I've talked to about things, and I've actually used that lesson in the past, and I've talked to people about that it is that you have to be the one that is in control, and you have to take charge of what it is, and you have to set the example for what you want these other athletes to go by, because most people just don't know, or they don't care to know, and you got to show them.
It's the little things.
It absolutely is a little thing. If you take care, and it goes back to the 6 a.m. details of the staff meeting. Why are we doing this percentage on set 3 rather than this, and why? And Stuck was asking you, right? I mean, you had to know what was going on, had to have that answer of why, and to work through the issues and the problems of what it's going to be. So the details always matter.
Yeah, those meetings certainly shaped me. It made me, the coach that I am today because of the attention to detail.
Attention to detail, absolutely.
Yeah. Let me ask you this: how many of the schools in the area around Richmond? How far is DC from you?
DC's probably about an hour and 45 minutes, 2 hours.
Yeah. How many of those schools have a dedicated strength coach that you know of, or are they trained by, just like most high schools where they're trained by a football coach? Or
I would say that the majority of schools have there's somebody that's going to be in charge of it. But I would say the majority of schools that is not a certified strength coach. It's going to be, you have your private schools here in town that have somebody that's a certified strength coach, but most of your high schools are going to be the guy that once played for them. Some of them now, I think that the school systems are asking for the CSCS, at least something that there's there to at least show that that you've certified, and that you've taken the next step within the coaching ranks. I think that with anything, a lot of coaches, I would say the majority of them are football coaches, and that they are inundated within football season. Football season comes around, and all of your fall sports, your wrestling, your basketball, but then everybody who's getting ready to go play in the springtime, where this is their off season, right? This is where you should be. That is spring sports should be getting strong right now, and that a lot of times those coaches aren't in the weight room, so they come in and they'll write a workout up on the board, and you have the girls soccer coach who she's essentially overseeing it, but she's not coaching that program. She's not showing what that program is, and it's not her fault. It's just like how it is and how it's kind of trickled down. But I think that I think that it's gotten more. There are more coaches. There are more strength coaches now that are helping out within the weight rooms and in schools than there have been in the past. And I think they're taking it a little more seriously. But I think that's always something that is still very behind. I think the programming is always kind of the huckleberry of is it just are we doing a football? And all the coaches want to know, are we doing a football workout? Is this just a football workout that we're doing? Well, squat's a squat is a squat. And that goes through all the different sports. I think that we see, unfortunately, different schools will hire people or groups like myself to come in and assist with their high school programming and the overseeing of the weight room to make sure that it is done properly.
Yeah. So you made me think of something, and I was going to ask it earlier because I've heard that this, I don't want my team doing a football workout, and so I wanted to ask you: do you train the men and women in your facility any different from one another?
No.
Yeah, they're athletes.
They're athletes. You're an athlete. It is, and I think it all goes back to what sport you're playing and how well versed you are inside the weight room. Where is your weight room IQ, so to speak? You talk about sports IQ. Where's your weight room IQ? I'm not talking about, I can't remember the name. What does this exercise mean? What is this name of it? But I'm talking about, can they do it and execute it properly?
Right.
But if you're a girl basketball player or a male basketball player, I don't see you're a basketball player. It's the same thing. Now girls lacrosse versus boys lacrosse, and it's two totally different sports on the field. You're still both playing lacrosse. You both still need to train, you both need condition to be able to do those things. So I just think that yes, you can train them exactly the same. Just with the programming might be just a hair different depending on the sport and what you're asking of them.
Yeah. Anything that we've missed out on?
I don't think so. Unless you can think of anything. I mean, it's been. I mean, I think that as you go through for young coaches as they go in, it's understand where you want to be as a young coach. Be respectful at the place that you are. When I was a young strength coach at Macaulay, my first year in, I absolutely loved the place. I kept going through and sending out resumes to colleges. I figured that's where I needed to be. That's where I came out of Tennessee. I wanted to be at the college level. And I'll send these things out, and the head football coach who's there now, Ralph Potter, sees me one day and calls me to his office. He goes, "Are you here or are you not here?" I go, "What do you mean, coach? I'm here." He goes, "Well, every day I walk in, and once a week I see you sending out a resume to a different, or sending out a packet to another school." And he goes, "My advice is that if you're good enough, they're going to come find you. You just need to come. You just need to sit here and stick your nose in and start winning. If not, figure out where you want to be." And it was a great piece of advice because he called me out, and he didn't think about it like that, and he was right. And once I realized where I was, what I wanted to do is where I truly, fortunately for that conversation, it's where I truly found where I wanted to be in the strength conditioning world. That I personally liked coaching the middle school and the high school athlete. That fit me, where there's plenty of guys that have been extremely successful. I mean, as yourself, on the college level, it's just two different animals. It's two different type of things. I love the development of the athlete. I love being able to teach a kid how to do things. I find just as much satisfaction in a kid that's come through the program and is now starting JV as I do the kid who has become All-State. Because for them at that level, it's such a big accomplishment. Or the kid that scores his first goal, it does something for the first time on its own. And I think that's where I love that development, and then to be able to hand them off at the college. And we have a lot of my son, who's a freshman now, his whole crew who's going out playing college sports. And this summer we got after it. I mean, it was an old school fifth gear program where let's go. I mean, I want you showing up on campus ready to go. And the majority of these guys and girls who went through it had extremely nice falls going in, and have been very successful at what they're doing. It puts them in a good position to succeed once they get into the springtime, mentally, physically. But I think the mental approach for the athletes is there. For the young coaches, it's understanding that these athletes are looking at you, and the majority of the time they're going to spend way more time with you as a strength coach than are there anybody else in the athletic department. And they need to know that you are there for them. My policy has always been that if you have something going on, come and talk to me. If we sit down in the office and that door shuts, then it stays within these four walls unless it's something that is going to be that there's a safety issue, or we need to progress it further. But they need to know that they can talk about some things that they may not be able to talk to mom and dad about. Something that's really bothering them. They might not
or their buddy.
Talking. And sometimes we can not only be a good ear, but we can help push them to a right direction if they need further help or assistance.
You know that. All right. So that reminds me of another point. Anything, because you probably train guys that are going through their high school's weight program.
Yep.
What are some things that you see newcomers that come to you that probably have 2 or 3 years of training under their belt, but they're still lacking in that, something that there's a common thread among those young men and women that have not trained with you that they're missing out on? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Depending on the program, a lot of time tightness in hips. That they're tight. Most of the high schools that it's heavier is better, and so they haven't worked through a proper range of motion. And then if they are doing Olympic movements within the high school, and most high schools that I have come across aren't snatching, but they will do a power clean or a hang clean. And most of the time when they go to catch the bar, they're not sitting back and down. It's more of a kickstand, and they're still really tall with arms straight down as they go to catch it. It's more of a giant reverse curl, like old school Al Wilson catching that bar with 315, just rolling that thing. And,
he was different.
He was different.
Here's the amazing thing, okay, is that most people would rather do a poor job of coaching a clean or just saying, okay, we're going to do power cleans. This is how you, all right. I had an assistant coach one time that he said he was taught how to power clean. He walks in the weight room and the coach looks at him and says, hey, we're doing power cleans today. You see what he's doing? And my assistant coach says, yeah, I see it. And he goes, well, do what he's doing.
Yeah.
And that's how he was taught to power clean. But the snatch is actually much easier to introduce and coach than a clean. And by snatching, you develop the explosive speed that you need that carries over to the clean. But coaches, they'll skip over the snatch and not even coach it, thinking that it's a tough lift to coach, and then not even perform the clean properly. And I never quite understood why coaches do that.
So, like, for example, I'm at a high school right now, 3 days a week, and the programming is a very base programming for them. I mean, we'll have progressions in our squat and our bench, but as far as the cleans, it's more of a trap bar pull. Because I think that the pull phase of it is obviously very important for that age group. But because the majority of the kids are so sporadic on the days that they're showing up, it's hard to program it because they're not going to be consistent. And they're not going to be consistent, then it's hard to put that into the program. But if you have a group that is cutting, when I was at Macaulay, it was very easy to program because you were in weight. If you weren't in a sport, you were in weights and conditioning, and you were with me 4 days a week. So I could take you through, and I could put together a 12-week program, and here's how we're going to do it. So depending on how the school is set up is how you can push and program that side of it. So if it's not a mandatory deal within a public high school of this is what you're doing, I think that becomes a little bit harder to program.
All right. So you're going to schools and they're paying you to go into the schools and train their kids, but it's not mandatory. Oh, wow.
Same way in public schools now, you can't make them dress out for gym anymore. You can wear whatever you want to wear.
Yeah.
So it's just different. I mean, now you get some sports are better than others. Some kids are better than others. You'll see many of the same. And as anything, right? I mean, the kid that shows up day in and day out, who is consistent with the program, they're making tremendous gains. We have a young man on the lacrosse team right now who's made just huge strides. Well, you know what he does? He shows up every day, 3 days a week.
Yeah.
So he's a guy that, even though it's not programmed into it, I'll teach him how to do a clean, how to do a snatch. I'll teach him how to do a 3x3 because I can put him on a platform down off to the side because he's been consistent 3 days a week for the last 8-9 weeks. And we have 5 more weeks so I can get him where I want him to be as he heads into the winter.
All right. We're getting to the end. So there's a question I got to ask you. How's Nate doing? And how are you and Ann doing making an adjustment to being semi-empty nesters?
You know, it's been exciting and different and difficult. My son's a lacrosse player. He's up at Connecticut College playing lacrosse up there as a freshman and has adapted extremely well. Fortunately, unlike me, he did extremely well in high school academically. And he put himself in a good position to succeed up there.
What's he majoring in?
Economics, finance, like every other.
There you go.
So he's doing
not
that.
PE.
Not PE. No. Thank goodness. Thank you. And then our daughter, who's a junior, has been, as you know, she was gymnastics up into this year, and I guess fortunately, unfortunately, he's coming off of ankle surgery right now, so he's going to hopefully make the transition into diving. So both of them are still swimming into sports. We've been up to so they're doing that, but it's our son. We've been up to a parents' weekend, and just seeing him adapt and have a great nucleus of friends and doing what he's doing, and his lacrosse team is essentially his fraternity up there. And then he's been home one weekend for fall break, and I don't know, it's kind of weird. It's like I almost feel like I'm sleeping better when he's at school than he was in Richmond.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hey, he's not going to come home unless he needs something.
I know. Same
Money
way phone,
or clothes.
Money or clothes. Hey, Dad, I went to Costco. I just bought groceries. Can you Venmo me some money?
Yeah.
I just need some money.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, our time is up, man. We've been rolling.
Well, thank you, Tommy. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been really good talking to you, catching up. And, I had forgotten about how you got to Knoxville, because it's been so long ago. I mean, it's been 28 years or something like that, or more now. It's probably been 28, 29 years since then. So it's been a long time, but it's been great.
It was just such an unbelievable experience. And then the first year my daughter came down to LSU for gymnastics camp and walked in, and I saw your program up on the board. And I'm fortunately found a lot of success using that as the basis for what I've done as a strength coach. What I learned at Tennessee is what developed me and how I was able to, like that booking portal, and as you get done, like the earth, and then you kind of get more streamlined to where it is, that I've been able to take that kind of move it down, and to lay that proper foundation. If someone's gonna go train with Tommy Moffitt, and they're gonna be part of the LSU at the time football team or wherever you're gonna be at that football program, if they get there, can I put the program together that's gonna get them to that spot? Be ready to go. So your influence, the guys at Tennessee, and that influence was such a huge part of my success, fortunately. And as a young strength coach, being a part of that grouping with those tremendous athletes and coaches who were there, and seeing what all those coaches are still doing to this day. I was extremely, extremely blessed and fortunate to be part of something that was way bigger than myself. And you didn't even know how cool it was back then until you're here.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And the good thing about it is those guys are all still coaching. Yep. We're all still real tight. And, I'm going to have, before it's over with, and this is when you go into business, whether it's, and I've said this before, it sounds cliche, and it is, whether it's insurance or automobile sales or anything else, the first thing you do is sell all your friends. And so, having you on here is just the beginning. In fact, I'm doing Big Baby next Friday.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so Rob is going to be on here next Friday. So I'm starting at the base of the pyramid and working my way up. And waiting on until after football season's over. Going to have Ciano on here. Double A is going to be on here. So it's exciting to go back and to talk to people and, remember some of the stories that, we've had. And the best time is before we start the record.
Yeah, absolutely.
Once you hit the record button, you kind of got to clean it up a little bit. But, you don't want to leave a paper trail or anything. Yeah.
Those couple years were so just awesome in so many different respects. Yeah. I mean, some of the story, even from Ciano, everybody. It's just been, it was a great time back then.
Yeah. Well, so for those that are listening, you can visit Elkin Sports Performance at elkinsportsperformance.com. There's no S on the end of Elkin. elkinsportsperformance.com, and give Jason and ESP a follow on Instagram at ESP Richmond. Please give Ann, Nate, and Maddie our best. It's been great seeing you, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Good luck. Let's stay in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Tom.
Here we are at the Ask Coach Questions section of the podcast. The Ask Coach Questions gives the listeners an opportunity to ask me questions regarding this particular podcast, the Moffitt Method program, or anything strength and conditioning related, please email your questions to podcast@themoffittmethod.fit. Today's question comes from Lamar, and it's actually very fitting for today's podcast. Coach Moffitt, what's the best single piece of advice that you can give a young athlete that's just beginning to lift weights and getting into strength and conditioning? Lamar, again, that's a great question and something I'm very passionate about, and something that Jason and I talked a lot about today, and that's technique. Technique is paramount, and without focusing on it daily, you will limit your results in that exercise and, more importantly, increase the risk of injury while in the weight room. There's nothing more important for a young lifter to understand, and that is you must learn to practice flawless technique daily. Every time you walk in the weight room, and as Jason said, every set, every rep has to be done correctly. Do not rely on just the work that your coach or trainer has you do in the workout. When you're at home on the weekend, or instead of watching TV or playing video games, take a broomstick or a light bar and practice the movements. Watch videos of others doing those movements on YouTube, and then even have somebody video you so you can look at that video and see where you're doing really well and where you may be making some mistakes. The key is to perform the exercises repeatedly over and over again and do so many reps flawlessly that it's impossible for you to do one rep wrong. Then, as you begin to get stronger and more experience, continue to make technique and how you perform the exercises a priority. This reminded me of a young man that I coached 30 years ago, and relayed a similar message to him while he was in the weight room one day. The young man's name was Joe. And then Joe went on to practice the lift so much at night that his father came to me one day and said, "Hey, Coach, my wife is upset because Joe comes in the kitchen at night and he's practicing these exercises with the broomsticks over and over again, and she's afraid he's going to ruin the kitchen floor." And this is a true story. And that young man went on to become a great lifter for John Curtis and a very good high school athlete. His name is Joe Danos, and he is now the director of player development for the University of Florida Gators football team. So it doesn't matter if you want to be a great high school athlete, you want to be a great high school weightlifter, or you want to go on someday to be a collegiate or professional strength coach. It all goes back to flawless technique and making sure that you're not concerned with how much you're lifting, but how well you're lifting. This brings us to the end of today's podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you are someone interested in doing a podcast with us, or if you know of someone that you would like to recommend to us as a guest, please email us at podcast@themoffittmethod.fit. I hope that you enjoyed today's podcast as much as I did. Please subscribe. If so, please subscribe and leave a review. For more information about the Moffitt Method program and everything that we have to offer, please visit our website at themoffittmethod.fit. Thanks, and have a great day.